Now in this presentation, we are going to discuss about the safety in engineering industry, and especially we are going to focus only on the hazards which are available in the working environment. So normally when we are talking about the engineering industries, we know the activities, we know the operations, the equipments and the parameters which is involved in the engineering industries. And on the basis of that, we have to discuss the hazards present in the working environment. So every workplace has hazards, because if you observe, even from the offices, administration office, in the gate, all the fields or the workplaces are having a specific hazards. As an employer, you have a legal responsibility to look after your employees' safety and protect them against health and safety hazards at a workplace. So starting from the gate entry and at the exit also, if you observe the different departments, the different sections in your industry, and when we are talking about the engineering industries, then there are lot of hazards available in that industry. So we have to keep track on these types of hazards. Then we have to identify these types of hazards. We have to analyze what level of these hazards is and how to prevent, how to treat in case accident or incident is going to happen. So all these are the responsibilities of the employer. In order to manage workplace health and safety and help prevent accidents and sickness absence, it's important to identify, monitor and reduce the risk associated with the workplace hazards. So with the help of this hazard identification, we have to analyze the risk also. So that may be a low, medium or high risk area. So we have to identify the high risk area, and then we have to focus first on the high risk areas. How to reduce this high risk at least at the medium risk. If there are some medium risk, then how to reduce this medium risk to the lower risk. So that is the continual improvement process which is can be happen or conducted with the help of the HIRA, hazard identification and risk analysis. So with the help of some other techniques also, we can reduce the hazards as well as the risk level. So there are 6 main categories of the hazards are available in the engineering industries. First is biological. Biological hazards include viruses. Now we are facing the issues due to coronavirus, and coronavirus is actually a family of viruses or different viruses, and one of the viruses is COVID-19. So this COVID-19 directly indirectly affects on various activities in the industries or in the daily life also. So you can understand with the help of the current situation that how a single virus or the family of virus affects on our daily life. And that is not the case only in the particular region, but it is a worldwide um, impact due to these viruses. So this creates a pandemic situation due to a single virus. So from that issue also you can understand what exactly the biological hazard is. So sometimes some bacteria, insects, animals, etc. also include in these biological hazards that can cause adverse health impacts. For example, mold, blood and other bodily fluids, harmful plants, sewage, dust and vermin. So due to these viruses or bacteria or due to some insects or animals, the adverse impact or adverse effect on your health is nothing but a biological hazards. Then second one is chemical hazards, which is very hazardous normally in the chemical industries, but nowadays in engineering industries also we are using the chemical for different applications, and that is why these chemicals are hazards are also present in the engineering industries. So that can cause harm. This hazard can result in both health and physical impacts such as skin irritation, respiratory system irritations, blindness, corrosion, and explosions. So there are various chemicals. We have learned about these chemical classification, UN classification of hazardous chemicals. There are 9 classes and some how these classes and subclasses, what are their severities, what are their hazards, what are their impacts on the bodies, or sometimes some chemicals are explosive chemicals, some are corrosive chemicals, some are flammable chemicals, etc. So there are various categories of these chemicals, and due to these characteristics of these chemicals, that chemical hazards is created. So third one is physical hazards. So physical hazards are environmental factors that can harm an employee without necessarily touching them. So when we are touching these chemicals, then you may suffer from the skin irritation, you may suffer from the burn issues or other issues, right? When chemical is going to contact with the metals, then and then only this corrosion may be happen, right? But in the physical hazard with the environment factor, that is not the case. So without touching the person, without touching the metal, that may harm that material or the person. That is included in the physical hazards are included in the environmental factors. So including the heights, noise, radiation, pressure, etc. So due to compressor, due to fan, blowers, etc. or some punching activities, some press machines. So there are some machineries or some operations which can't be avoidable in the industries, but that create a noise, and we have to control this noise. So there are different solutions also to how to avoid this noise, how to reduce this noise, how to control this noise, and radiations or some pressure parameters are also there. So similarly, we have to adopt some remedial measures to reduce or to control these types of physical hazards. And fourth one is safety. These are the hazards that create unsafe working conditions. So normally when we are talking about the safety, we are talking about the unsafe working conditions and unsafe acts. So for example, exposed wires or a damaged carpet might result in a tripping hazards. So this is the working condition. So working condition is called as unsafe when it may have the capacity or capability to create an incident or injury to a body, right? So this is called as unsafe working conditions. So this is the safety hazard. These are sometimes included under the category of physical hazards also. Then ergonomic hazards. So we have already discussed in the previous presentations what exactly the ergonomic is. So that is work related hazards, that is ergonomic hazards. So that is the result of physical factors that can result in a musculoskeletal injuries. So we have talked about the musculoskeletal disorder, we have talked about the carpal tunnel syndromes, we have talked about the computer vision syndromes, etc. So when the hazard which is related to the physical factors or musculoskeleton, that is related to the muscles, and skeleton, that is bones, and if that is created to the injuries, then it is a ergonomic hazards. For example, a poor workstation set up in an office, poor posture, and manual handling. So these are some of the examples of these ergonomic hazards. So sometimes the workstation may be having more height as per the expectations, which is not comfortable, and sometimes less height, which is not expected, which is not comfortable for a particular person. So depending on the conditions also, you have to readjust some of the uh, tables, chairs, or some other equipment or the sitting positions also. Then sixth one is psychosocial. Psychosocial hazards includes that can have an adverse effect on an employees mental health. So psycho means psychological and social, so combination of these. So employees mental health or well-being. So for example, sometimes it may be the case of sexual harassment, victimization, stress and workplace violence. So this may affect on the psychological stresses of that particular worker, and due to that psychological pressure, psychological stresses, the focus or the concentration of the worker is going to decrease, and that may create a situation due to which situation accident or incident may happen. So these are the different hazards present in the working environment, especially when we are talking about the engineering industries, because there are various hazards and various types of hazards mentioned by the different experts, but these hazards are specially for the working environment in the engineering industries. Now, in the physical hazards, it is electrical hazard. So what exactly the electric hazard? We know that we have to use the electrical equipments, electrical machineries, etc. And these hazards are important because the most of the cases these hazards may result into fatalities, right? If the hazard or the electric shocks, due to electric shocks, the people may die, because if the voltage or the current is more than the which is under control normally in the uh, residential area, but in the industries, when we are talking about the three-phase motor, when we are talking about the high current lines or high voltage lines, then the electrical accident may convert into the fatalities. So that may be due to electric shocks, that may be the burns, explosions and falls from the heights. So high tension lines, high voltage lines, all these activities or the maintenance or the repairing, installation, all these activities needs to work at height, and if you are not going to follow the guidelines or the work permit systems, then there may be a case of fall from the height, right? So that may convert into the fatality case. The risk is increased in wet conditions because we know that water is a good conductor of electricity, and that is why we always have to avoid these moistures or the water from that particular place. So the risk is going to increase if wet condition is there, because moisture or water is present, and then there is a possibility of electric shocks or short circuit, where a worker's equipment and surroundings can also become live. Why it is become live? Because this wet means moisture or water, and it is going to conduct the electrical supply. So it may convert the non-live equipment or tools into live equipments. Then second one is fire hazards under these physical hazards. So we all know about what exactly the fire hazard is. So if the fire triangle completes, that is fuel, oxygen and the ignition source, then there is a fire hazards. So we have to avoid these elements, or at least one element from these three slides of these three uh, sides of these triangles, then we can avoid this fire. So sometimes we have to avoid the cut off the oxygen, sometimes we have to isolate the fuels, and sometimes we have to focus on the ignition source. So if any one case is there, then we can avoid these types of fire hazards. So there are various cases like caring homes, schools, hotels, organizations that carry out hot work, food manufacturers and restaurants. Fires can be devastating both to the organization and people impacted, and which can cause the serious injuries. So if the fire is at high level, then they may create the issues like burns, asphyxiation, and fatalities. So asphyxiation means lack of oxygen and more of carbon monoxide or carbon dioxide. So which may create a condition like suffocation, that is uncomfortable for breathing to the persons. So that may create due to more fire cases or high combustible substances in that area. So a risk assessment is an essential precaution in fire and safety procedures. So the main or the principal methods to avoid the fire hazard is to avoid the three elements at a single place or in a single field. Then third one is confined spaces. So we have already discussed about these confined spaces in a different presentation, but I am going to repeat in a shorter time. So confined spaces are the spaces where the hazards are present to that employees and that depends on the conditions. So generally, when the oxygen levels in a particular area is lesser than the normal level, then it is called as confined spaces. Then it is called oxygen deficient atmosphere confined space. And other than this oxygen level, some cases are fire cases, then explosion, asphyxiation, or loss of consciousness may happen due to these oxygen levels at the low level, because our body required at least 21% oxygen at normal conditions, and if the oxygen level reaches less than 19%, then depending on your body, the person may suffer from the suffocation, and if it is the severe case, then he may or she may loss of consciousness. So if the oxygen level is very less, then it may convert to the fatality also. So depending on the conditions, we have to maintain this oxygen level at a normal conditions, that is of 21% oxygen level. Then some other cases like collapse or flooding cases. Some peoples are also working in mines, cold storage, tunnels, wells, ship holds, air ducts, and manholes. So where the diameter of that pipe, diameter of that manhole is less normally, if it is approximately about 18 inches, and then it is a high risk area where you are going to do the activities like repair, or sometimes it is activities for replacing some cases, replacing some parts. But if you are doing these activities in a very uncomfortable zone, then also it is called as confined spaces. So even if it is not a case of less oxygen or oxygen deficient atmosphere, but due to this uncomfortable place, this is called as confined space. Then fourth one is extreme temperatures. So if you are uh, doing the activities at high temperatures, so in the previous session we have already discussed about the ferrous industries or the furnace or the boilers or the heat exchangers, etc., where the temperatures are very high. At if you compare the normal temperature zone, so normally we are comfortable at 25 degrees Celsius, which is comfortable zone for our body. If you are working at 100 degrees Celsius plus or 1000 degrees Celsius, then it is an extreme temperature case. So for that purpose, we have to adopt some precautionary measures. We have to follow some instructions, and we have to train some people for that particular work only. So we have to adopt some personal protective equipments like gloves, glasses, some protective clothings. Sometimes we also require the air supply or oxygen cylinders also. So depending on the conditions, if it is the case of welders, bakers, melters, launderers, etc., then you have to work with some precautionary measures. So these are some of the cases of physical hazards. So what exactly the radiation hazard is? We know that radiations are nothing but the wave. So the spontaneous decay of radioactive material produces radiations. So that material is called as radioactive material. So in the daily life, we are knowing about these X-rays, but in industries, in R&D activities, there are some activities which require alpha rays, beta rays, gamma rays. And these X-rays are needed in the hospitals, in clinics, in other areas also. So in organizations, in R&D, especially when we are talking about the organizations like Bhabha Atomic Research Centers. So these BARC activities guaranteed involve the radiations, because the main focus or the objective of that BARC organization is study on the radioactive material only. So for the nuclear power stations, for the nuclear materials, for some of the metallurgical activities run in the particular industries, all these radiation may be the hazards. So that may be a ionizing radiation or non-ionizing radiations. So ionizing radiation can damage living tissues in the human body. It strips away the electrons from atoms, breaks some chemical bonds. The allowed exposure from specific radioactive sources to the public are limited to 100 mrem. Medical X-rays generally deliver less than 10 mrem, and all kinds of these ionizing radiations produces health effects. The problem with these radioactive materials and these radiations is that these radiations are not visible, and we are feeling only the effects. So what exactly the health effect is, and with the help of these, with reference to these health effects, doctor is going to analyze that you have these problems, right? So we have to recall where we have gone in some period, where the radioactive sources are there, because these radioactive sources only give these radiations. So this may damage by the different kinds of tissues, vary with the types of radiations, and it is with the person's reactions also. So direct exposure to the radiation and radiation emits can affect the whole body, while inhalation or ingestion affects tissues inside the body. The body attempts to repair the damage caused by the radiation, because that is the natural reaction by the body itself. But if it is the moderate or at high level radiation, then it is not possible to recover all these radiation adverse effects. So for that purpose, we have to go to the doctors, and whatever the activities, the treatment suggested by the doctor, we have to follow that. However, at times the damage is so severe and widespread that repair is impossible, because radiation normally gives us the bad damage, the permanent damage. For example, due to ultraviolet radiations, the skin is going to burn. So whatever the cells, that is live cells, available in that skins in the first layer or second layer, that is permanently damaged due to these ultraviolet radiations. So we can't recover these first or second layer skin, so that is permanently damaged. Radiations can damage the process of normal cell divisions, leading to cancers. So if it is the continuous case, if you are going to handle some of the activities under these areas where the radiation sources are there, then there are chances of cancers. And non-ionizing radiations do not affect the molecular levels. They may cause electrical shocks and burns. Prolonged exposure to microwave radiations, which is non-ionizing, may cause contracts. So that is why we have to take care about these radiations, and these are the ionizing radiations and non-ionizing radiations, and depending on these characteristics of these ionizing and non-ionizing radiations, the adverse health impacts are different one, right? So from this diagram you can understand what exactly the different ionizing and non-ionizing radiations are. The thyroid gland is one of the most radiation sensitive parts of the body, especially in babies and children. Most nuclear accidents release radioactive iodine into the atmosphere. This is absorbed by the body, and absorption of too much radioactive iodine can cause thyroid cancer to develop the several years after the exposures. So you can understand from these different bandwidth or the range what exactly the ionizing and non-ionizing radiation is. So these are some of the examples or the sources of these ionizing and non-ionizing radiations. So this is 10 raised to 2, extremely low ELF and very low frequency range, then 10 raised to 4 to 10 raised to 6, then 10 raised to 6 is near about radio waves, 10 raised to 8, 10 raised to 10 microwaves, 10 raised to 12 to 10 raised to 14 infrared waves, and these are the different uh, sources like high tension wires or some radio signals, then mobile phones and some microwave oven or infrared equipments. Then ultraviolet, that is from 10 to 16 to 10 to 18, what we have discussed, ultraviolet radiations and the skin burning, that may be due to these UV rays ranging from 10 to 16 to 10 to 18, and 10 to 22 is about X-rays and gamma rays. So X-ray machines are producing these X-rays, but nowadays digital X-ray machines are provided in the hospitals, sophisticated hospitals, which reduces the X-ray radiations. Then 10 to 24 to 10 to 26 is the range. So there are different ranges, different sources of these radiation hazards. So these are the different hazards which are present in the working environment of the engineering industry. So from these hazards, we have to opt for some precautionary measures, some safety measures to reduce these hazards or to avoid these hazards. Thank you.